Good. So just to go back to this last slide, looks complicated, but actually it's fairly straightforward. What the IPCC and all its committees do is collect all the documented evidence in papers, in data, uh, whatever else they can find from people and so on. And they look at physical systems, biological systems, and human and managed systems. So in the physical systems, you have glaciers, snow, ice, permafrost, rivers, lakes, floods and droughts, coastal erosion, and sea level effects, and so on. In the biological systems, you have terrestrial and marine ecosystems and wildlife and so on. In the human and managed system, obviously you have food production, livelihoods, health, and economics. Okay, the evidence that is found is then based on the robustness of the data and the reproducibility, the accuracy, the precision, and so on are verified to the best extent possible, and they are graded. So the grading is shown around here. It is a confidence in the attribution to climate change. So as we said, you detect a change. It could be a bird that arrives every, let's say, every spring, but it begins to arrive earlier. So over a few years, you document that this bird is arriving here where I'm sitting on the lake earlier every year now. This is a detected change. I have to confirm that this detection is robust in terms of having sufficient number of years where this change is documented. Then I have to attribute that change in the arrival of the bird is related to climate change, the warming, earlier arrival of spring, and so on. Okay, that's what is done, and the confidence varies. So based on these number of bars you see here in different colors, they are very low, low, medium, high, and very high. So when you have 5 bars in many of these places, or 4 bars, let's see, where is the one with very high number of bars? Not many. So many of them have high confidence, very few of them have very high confidence, but it really depends on things. So the main thing you notice is this is going from polar regions, both including Arctic and Antarctic, and all the continents and all the oceans. Okay, terrestrial and marine biology, food production everywhere, and so on. So you see that all systems, physical systems, biological systems, and human and managed systems have some change across the entire globe. Okay, so you can see polar regions, glaciers and snow affected, rainfall affected, coastal erosion documented, marine and terrestrial ecosystems affected, and so on, and human and managed systems affected. So this is the story across every continent and every ocean. Okay, even including the small islands. Island states, right, in the Atlantic, in the Pacific, and in the Indian Ocean, especially those in the Western Pacific. We will see the patterns of warming later on. We have to also look at the sea levels. If you're an island nation and sea level is rising, you are in serious trouble, right? So island like Vanuatu, for example, has even made a contingency plan. If sea level rises too much, they want to move their entire population to another island. This is an actual plan because they take climate change seriously, because they have observed sea level rises already. There are other details. We talked about fisheries, the exclusive economic zone. We talked about how island nations sell their rights for fishing to rich countries to exploit their coastal waters and so on. With sea level rise, the land will shrink. Your island will get smaller. So does your exclusive economic zone also shrink? This is a serious issue, right? So consequences of climate change are going to be like this. Okay, we will talk about few other examples, like if there is a typhoon that hits Philippines and the typhoon is stronger than it should be because of global warming, and global warming is caused by industrialized countries, then who pays for the excess damage caused by the excessively strong typhoon that strikes Philippines? Okay, so it's not just about how we will adapt to climate change, how we will try to reduce climate change. It is about how we will determine the responsibility for the damage caused by climate change. Okay, who will pay for it? So these are kind of very complicated issues that are all being considered under the umbrella of the IPCC. We'll look a little bit more about something called Paris Agreement, which is now currently operational, but you probably heard of Paris Agreement as well as the one before called the Kyoto Protocol, which was the first international agreement that started in something like 1997, I think, which expired in 2012. Paris Agreement replaced it. So what is determined in terms of action by the countries under Paris Agreement? What are the mechanisms to verify if you are meeting your commitments and so on? We will look a little bit into that. So this is a global problem. If you're an optimist, you will say it's good that all the countries are involved in negotiating despite all the problems and despite the fact that some countries haven't signed the Paris Agreement and so on, because it's an international agreement, but locally within your country you have to convince people that this is something they should comply to. Some country might say, why should we do that? Right? And it has happened regularly. They will say, China is doing all the pollution, Mexico is doing all the pollution, India is doing all the pollution, and they have a population problem. They are responsible. Why should we do it? So historically, who has been responsible? Who has been responsible in the last 20, 30 years, since we understood very clearly that fossil fuel burning is causing global change? And who will burn more fossil fuel in the future? All these things are considered. So it is a very difficult problem, but every country is at least trying to be part of the process of negotiating and coming to an agreement. Okay? Difficult problem, but hopefully we have the wherewithal in us as global human beings to protect ourselves against our own actions.